Happy hump day to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Still not too much going on weather-wise, but we do have a few specific things to talk about. One of the things being our sunrise and sunset times, because we're heading into a portion of the year over the next couple of weeks where we are going to see some drastic changes in that. So we'll go over the latest. But first things first, let's break down your main headlines, and they remain the same as what we had yesterday. Staying dry and sunny, cool mornings and warm afternoons, and then our next rain chance is still going to arrive on Sunday, getting a bit of a better image about the timing of that rain entering Central Georgia. So we'll go over the latest with what some of the longer range models are predicting in terms of possibly the timing of at least a few sprinkles entering the forecast, and really can start to zoom in and get an idea of at least some rainfall totals. Here's a look around the quad here in Central Georgia. Some cameras facing over to the west, some up to the north where, hey, look at that. We have a cloud in the sky. That is definitely a change from the last 24 hours. That's right up here over downtown Macon. There are a few clouds over here off in the horizon as we look. I believe this is over towards the west in downtown Dublin, maybe a little bit towards the northwest. And then back over to the east down in Houston County, nothing but blue skies as you look towards I-75 and you look off Cohen Walker Drive over there and eventually make your way to I-75 the farther east that you travel. Here's a look at your temperatures, low 70s and actually a few upper 60s, so a bit cooler than say what we were hitting at this time yesterday. We actually had Vidalia leading the way at 77 degrees yesterday at the 11 a.m. hour. Well, so far, Macon has the warmest temperatures sitting at 75 degrees, but still a trail of upper 60s from Dublin all the way up to Wrightsville and all the way up to Sandersville. A good about 15 to maybe even 20 degree increase over the course of the last few hours as we once again got down into the low and mid 50s. Some areas probably hung out in the upper 50s this morning. So compared to the eastern United States, cooler air obviously farther to the north. Like we've always been talking about, that as we go farther and farther into the fall, areas farther to the north, those higher latitudes are going to typically be a lot cooler this time of year. And then 81 in Panama City, 77 in Orlando, 78 in New Orleans, another pair of upper 70s in Houston and Laredo. But 81 in Panama City, that's the warmest number that we continue to see here in the eastern and the southeastern United States. Dew point temperatures have gotten a slight increase from this morning, just like the last couple of days. But overall, it is still a very dry atmosphere. We do see a widespread light green shade, but overall, this isn't really that substantial in terms of the light green color. And obviously, we're still well off dew point temperatures that could be up near the 70 degree mark. And hopefully, we're not dealing with that for the next couple of months as we now enter fall and winter, a less humid time of year. Humidity levels all across the southeast. It does look like the southern portion of Georgia is actually one of the more humid environments compared to states like Alabama, up into South Carolina, up into North Carolina. Northern Georgia doesn't have as much moisture in the forecast as we do down here in Central Georgia and South Georgia, but still no areas of dark green that can be found anywhere across the southeast United States. The winds and the wind gusts, this could be a bit of a factor today, but we're not looking at those gusty winds, say up to 25 or 30 miles per hour like we were looking at as of last week. But we will see some shades of blue, mainly I think down towards the south and the southeast. Those areas have the potential for maybe a gust up to about 15 miles per hour throughout today, but continuing to be a bit of an east and northeasterly breeze all across the area. So let's talk about some numbers. 86 for a high temperature yesterday. Once again, went above the models and above what was forecasted. 6 degrees above average for this time of year. Your morning low temperature continuing to hover a little bit below average. 50 degrees is what we started out at in Macon compared to your average low of 54 degrees. 90 degrees was the record high temperature. We actually got pretty close to that number, only 4 degrees shy of the record high set back in 1970 for yesterday. And your record low temperature, freezing temperature, back in 1988 at 32 degrees. Boy, am I glad we don't have any 30s in our forecast, but we could be talking about some upper 40s as we go into the beginning of next week. We'll talk about that more when we pop up your 7-day forecast at the end of this. But no rain once again. Your departure of rain still just above 3 inches above where we should be at this point in the year. But this is what I wanted to turn your attention to. Sunrise and sunset times. Obviously, we've continued to see that sunrise get a little bit later each day and the sunset get a little bit earlier each and every day. but the sun did set at 7:02, just past the 7 p.m. hour yesterday. So as we go into today, it's going to be the last evening that the sun sets past the 7 p.m. hour or at the 7 p.m. hour. Sunset tonight will be at 7:01 p.m. And in fact, in between today and tomorrow, we're going to lose 2 minutes in terms of your sunset. So the sun will set at 6:59 tomorrow evening. Your hours of daylight that you should expect today, if you are timing your stopwatch out from sunrise all the way to sunset, 11 hours, 22 minutes, and 4 seconds of daylight. Obviously under the 12 hours of daylight that we've been well over for the last couple of months. So the nights have continued to be longer than the hours of daylight that we've had each and every day. And this will get lower and lower by about another hour and a half as we go throughout the next couple of months. So speaking of that, as the days continue to get shorter, let's pick out a few important dates that you'll need to know. So today, October 15th, this Wednesday, obviously you see that sunrise time, 7:38 a.m., 7:01 p.m. for the sunset later tonight. And like we mentioned, 11 hours and 22 minutes of daylight. This date is very important, November 2nd, not just because we're rolling into a new month, that second to last month of the year. This is when our time change will happen, overnight between November 1st and November 2nd. 6:53 a.m. will be your sunrise. So that sunrise going back before the 7 a.m. hour, we'll be able to get a lot more light in the sky and be able to show you that quad view of the first sunrise or the first light in the sky as we go into the month of November for a brief moment in time at the end of our morning shows. 5:42 p.m. is when the sun will set as of November 2nd. That's going to start running into your evening commute time and your hours of daylight down below 11 hours as we go across the next 2.5 weeks in time. And then December 21st, that's an important date because it is the first official day of winter, the winter solstice, which will be our shortest day in terms of hours of daylight in the calendar year. 7:33 a.m. the sunrise. So even though we'll push that sunrise back all the way before the 7 a.m. hour, we will watch it go back to around 7:30, around the same time that the sun has been rising as of recently, once we go into the end of December, And then 5:32 p.m. going to be your sunset time. In fact, not even the earliest sunset time that we do see, that's actually going to be on December 1st, and our sun will be setting at 5:27 p.m. and that's going to be the earliest that it does set. But overall, that's still with all within about a 15-minute range right there, whether your sun is setting just before 5:30 or just after 5:30 on November 2nd. Your hours of daylight just below 10 hours of daylight on December 21st. But then after that, we will start to see the hours of daylight steadily increase, get back above 10 hours, eventually get back above 11 hours, and the days will continue to get longer until we go into the first day of summer next year, which will be around June 20th or June 21st. So those are all the important dates that you do need to know over the foreseeable future. But November 2nd isn't too far away. Like I mentioned, just about 2.5 weeks away. It will be those overnight hours after the Florida-Georgia game if you need something to kind of put it in a picture in your head in terms of the calendar. So sunrise, we did mention those times, and the sunset. The official change happens right before the 2 a.m. hour at 1:59 a.m. So the clock will not hit 2 a.m. if you are planning on staying up throughout the night. Once that clock gets to 1:59, then you will watch it go back to 1 a.m. and then we will gain an hour of sleep. So this is one of your favorite times. You'll gain an extra hour of sleep over the course of the weekend. It's obviously going to do you some good just to get a little bit of that extra rest. But the thing is, we are sacrificing those later sunsets for that extra hour of sleep. So I don't know if it's going to be necessarily a welcome trade-off for many of you. For us here on the morning team, it is a very welcome change. It will get darker earlier. It will make it easier for us to go to bed a little bit earlier each and every weeknight. But most of you are probably going to start to run into your fair share of darkness throughout the month of November, December, and probably most of January as the sun is beginning to set just after you get out of work around 5 p.m. or if you get off of work a little bit later, say 6 p.m., then it is going to be dark outside already. So taking a look at your short-term forecast now, I did mention there's not too many changes, but wanted to highlight all that information for you first and foremost. 84 for a high temperature today. That's exactly what I had forecasted yesterday. We went a little bit above and beyond that. But the big thing is this is continuing to be above average. Take a look at your average high temperature now. 79 degrees. So the 70s will become more and more common, but in fact, we try to hold on to the 80s for quite some time over the course of the next week. But the main thing you need to know is lots of sunshine, no rain chances, maybe a few clouds throughout the afternoon hours, and a steady breeze out of the northeast around 5 to 15 miles per hour. Really just a carbon copy forecast of what we had Monday, what we had yesterday, rolling into today. And tomorrow I'll go ahead and give you a bit of a teaser. It is going to be very similar to what we have today as well. So hour by hour, your temperatures forecasted to creep into the 80s as we go into 1 p.m. and then as we go into that peak heating hour, or peak heating time frame, I guess I should say, somewhere around 2 to 3 p.m. for the start of it, going all the way to 5 p.m. And then once we get into 6 p.m., that's when we'll start to see the temperatures drop. So of course, 7 p.m. right there around then is going to be when the sun is officially setting. That's when we'll see a more drastic temperature drop between 6 and 7 p.m. and going into the rest of your evening and nighttime hours. Satellite and radar picture. It's crystal clear here all over central Georgia, besides maybe one or two of those stray clouds that we did see on the Skycam image. All across the state of Georgia, cloud cover is very scarce. We can find some down near the Jacksonville area, getting over to Cumberland Island, close to St. Simons. Plenty of cloud cover over to the east, off in the Atlantic Ocean. But unless you're taking your dog for a walk out on the Georgia coast, South Carolina coast, going out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, nothing you need to worry about in the way of rain. So here's what our surface map currently looks like. We have a boundary to the north of us right now, and it's helping create some scattered shower chances across portions of the northern Ohio Valley, getting up into the Midwest, areas like Wisconsin, over to Iowa, portions of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. But this boundary right here is going to steadily kick into gear. You can see the right side of this boundary is already starting to drape down towards the south. Eventually, we'll look at this cold front to overtake more of the stationary front, and then it will continue to sag down into the south and the southeast. But we're actually looking at this boundary to break apart on the left side of it over the course of the next couple of days. But this is still going to be a big influence on our weather as we head into the end of the weekend. And when I say big influence, you know I'm probably picking at straws. Overall, not much to talk about. As you can see, Future View will not have any pause points on it. We can't even find a single cloud over the course of today and tomorrow. But then finally, it looks like we have some higher level clouds that are passing over. Nothing that's going to really block some sunshine, just maybe a few clouds higher up in the sky that will help create a pretty beautiful image as you're heading out to football Friday night and watching the sunset later on in the evening hours. So let's talk about the next 3 days, put it in number terms and give you an icon and talk about what could be in store in terms of maybe a possible slight cool down for the end of the work week. So 84 for that high temperature on Wednesday afternoon, still walking out the door to some mid and some upper, or some scattered 50s rather, I should say, because some areas will take it a step or two below that 55-degree mark. Most areas will probably hover above it. 82 for a high temperature tomorrow, so a slight downtick, still not finding much in the way of cloud cover. And then as we go into Friday, how about this? Down into the low 50s for high temperatures, or for morning low temperatures, excuse me, and then your afternoon high temperatures, 79 degrees, which is right on par with average that we now have seen that average high temperature creep down to. Some passing high level clouds, but overall your forecast will continue to be dominated by sunshine each of the next 3 days. But between Thursday and into Friday, really just the second half of Thursday, we'll look at the passage of that boundary I was referring to up to the north of us, and that's going to give us a northeasterly breeze that starts to usher in some cooler and some drier air. Not going to be very, very profound, but it is slightly cooler temperatures, and we start to see more of an impact in terms of the drier air as we head into the end of the work week. And then we'll look at a steady rebound in those humidity levels day by day as we go throughout the weekend. So if you have any afternoon or more so some evening plans tonight, great night to fire up the grill. Temperatures will be getting cooler as you progress from 6 to 8 p.m. Have green spatulas all throughout that dinner time frame. So overall, if you want to go out to eat, you want to grill out, nothing's going to be interrupting you in the way of weather whatsoever. And you could go ahead and copy and paste this for your Thursday evening and for your Friday evening. In fact, go ahead and take it all the way to Saturday, because Saturday is still looking like a great forecast as well. So we do see some shades of that light green built into the forecast throughout this afternoon into the evening. As we go overnight, your temperatures will start to cool down, and along with that, your dew point temperatures will do the same thing. But looking like a drier atmosphere already as we go into Thursday evening, and we just continue to see kind of that northeasterly breeze set up. We just start to see this push of no color start to push all of that light green over towards the west of us. How about this for Friday evening? Dew point temperatures in the 40s. No light green to be seen whatsoever really in central Georgia. Going to be a great feeling football Friday night forecast. And then the humidity maps go all the way out to 4 a.m. on Saturday. Throughout the day on Saturday, I think we'll start to see some of that light green get pushed back over towards the east, because that will be the direction frontal boundary number 2 will be arriving from. So let's talk some numbers before we get into the long range models. Mid 50s, some low 50s, maybe some upper 50s as we go throughout the next 5 days. We'll see that slight cool down between Thursday and Friday and Saturday because of that first frontal boundary that ushers in that slightly cooler and slightly drier air into the forecast. But then we do see our warmest morning low temperatures on Sunday morning, because we'll have more cloud cover creep into the forecast ahead of our frontal boundary. So that's going to create some slightly warmer morning low temperatures, a couple degrees above average of 54 this time of year, but overall still going to have a very pleasant feel as you walk outside. Your afternoon high temperatures also see that same downtick, but then we're back into the 80s for Saturday and Sunday. And I do expect Sunday to be a bit of a messy day, whether it's just full of gloomy skies or it's more so some dreary weather with plenty of overcast skies and plenty of rain chances. It's going to try to slow the warm up, but we'll have some breaks of sunshine, and it should allow for maybe some slightly above average high temperatures throughout the afternoon. So the humidity, the day-by-day graphic, or the muggy meter as we like to call it, really tells the whole story right here. So your humidity is obviously somewhere maybe into the low 60s throughout today. It starts to go down as we go throughout the day on Thursday. And really that very, very dry air, or virtually no humidity whatsoever, is very profound throughout the day on Friday, like we just showed you on the future view graphic. But then you turn your attention to Saturday and Sunday. We start to see the rebound of some of those dew point temperatures trying to return back into the upper 60s. It's not an overly humid atmosphere on Sunday, but there is at least some moisture to work with. And I imagine this little dot right here is probably going to climb a little bit higher as we get closer and closer and try to get a better picture about what's going to happen on Sunday. But then what happens on Monday and Tuesday as frontal boundary number 2 drives through at the end of the weekend, going to usher in more cooler and drier air for the beginning of the work week next week. Monday and Tuesday sees dew point temperatures go back down into the 50s and more so the 40s. This could be some of our most substantial cooler and drier air of the fall season yet. And I know I continue to say that on this stream, but that's what's going to happen as you get later into the fall season. Each cold front that comes through is going to start to usher in some slightly cooler and slightly drier air each and every time it does come through. And right now we're starting to get into a pattern where we have about 1 or 2 cold fronts pass through each and every week. This week specifically, it will be 2, but the first one isn't a very profound one. You don't get a glimpse of anything in the way of rain in terms of that front coming through. But now we go into Saturday, 4 p.m. You might see some of the long-range models hinting at a spotty shower or 2 in the northern portion of the state. So that could pertain to your forecast, say if you have plans to go up to Atlanta, maybe going up to a pumpkin patch, trying to see some fall foliage in the North Georgia mountains. Maybe even going up to Athens, Georgia, but it's not going to be anything that puts a damper on your afternoon plans on Saturday. I still think we'll be good to go. Now as we go all the way into Sunday morning, this looks like widespread rain. This does look like our fair share of rain that we desperately need because it's been a very dry stretch over the last month and a half. And it looks like this rain is making its entrance sometime during the morning hours on Sunday into the western portion of the state of Georgia. The European here in blue is just running slightly ahead of the GFS in green. But take a look at what happens as we go throughout the day on Sunday. Rain chances breaking apart as they come across here in central Georgia. This only looks like some light rain, so the darker blue colors that you get, that's going to be your heavier rainfall, maybe more so your thunderstorms. It doesn't look like any of those are really present over central Georgia whatsoever, and we may not even see a continuous line of rain push all the way through, and maybe not even giving everyone here in central Georgia the much needed rain that they do need as we progress all the way into Sunday night, 10 p.m. Yes, it still looks like better rain chances to the east, up to the north of us, but those rain chances are moving out of central Georgia. So this is a quick moving front. it should create a bit of a at least gloomy atmosphere. You saw that cloud cover that's associated with this on Sunday. But is it going to create some widespread dreary conditions? I still think that we're going to have pretty good coverage of rain, maybe about a 40% chance of seeing some scattered showers. I wouldn't even rule out a few rumbles of thunder, but it's not looking like severe weather is going to be likely with this system. Now let's go all the way into Monday afternoon. What's in store as you start out the new work week, head into that last full work week in the month of October, or maybe the last full work week. I'll have to do some tinkering with the calendar on that. Don't believe me when I said that, but still, as we go into the work week next week, Monday afternoon, crystal clear here in central Georgia. That continues for Tuesday, and that also continues for Wednesday, but maybe slightly more moisture in the forecast by the time we go into the midweek next week for just an increase in some cloud cover. Not a bad thing. If we keep some dense cloud cover in the forecast, it will limit the warm up as we go throughout the morning hours and into the afternoon, of course, as well. But taking a look at future view rainfall, this is according to the GFS model. So that green shade that we just showed you on the long range models looks like rain starting to make its entrance sometime around the 8 a.m. hour. And this isn't the most opportune because obviously 8 a.m. probably a prime time that many of you are heading out to church on Sunday. I would go ahead and make plans to have that rain jacket ready, not only for the morning commute out to church, but pretty much all afternoon as we go throughout Sunday. The rainfall totals are not impressive whatsoever. I zoomed in and I picked out a couple of locations. We're only seeing maybe about 1/4 of an inch of rain at the very most, but this isn't the best model resolution. This is not giving us a very good localized idea about what's going to happen. The European here actually does give us a little bit better resolution, so we can see maybe some pockets where the rainfall totals are a little bit higher. And once again, looks like 7 to 8 a.m. we start to see that rain moving in from the west, and then we go all the way through the afternoon into the middle of next week. But take a look at this, some isolated pockets of a 1/2 inch of rain, maybe even some pockets that get close to about 1 inch of rain. This still isn't very substantial whatsoever, and it does look like the general consensus is the farther west that you live, you have a chance at seeing some slightly higher rainfall totals than, say, areas farther over to the east. This gray shade is going to be higher rainfall totals than what you see here in the green, but we'll continue to fine-tune those specific details as we really get closer. Once our short-range future view gets this within view, we can really give you a better idea about the specific timing and exactly how much rain we're expecting. But the general guidance right now, maybe about 1/4 of an inch to about 1/2 inch of rain, and some isolated pockets that get up to about 1 inch or 1.5 inches. Consider yourself very lucky if you do get that much rain, but that's very similar to many of the rain chances we've had over recent weeks. It hasn't really done anything in terms of improving our very dry conditions, and we'll continue to talk about that at the very end of this extended weather stream. Here's Tropical Storm Lorenzo. We got to continue to make sure that we stay updated on the tropics, but Lorenzo is not of concern whatsoever. 40-mile-per-hour winds expected to maybe have a lifespan of a couple more hours. I don't expect Tropical Lorenzo to be on this tropical outlook as of this time tomorrow, but this is as of the 11 a.m. advisory. It continues to show weakening with this tropical storm. I mean, this just looks like a couple spotty clouds out there on our satellite and radar imagery, so nothing to worry about. It's out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but an area we will have to look out for is going to possibly be a tropical wave that's moving off the coast of Africa, and as it starts to get closer and closer to the Caribbean, there are some very extended long-range models that are hinting at a possible development of something as we go into the last couple of days of October. But overall, we're not putting too much stock into this. We're continuing to keep a close eye on it. But so far, everything that's panned out in the Atlantic hurricane season has mainly been a fish storm, or it hasn't been too strong in nature with the exception of a few, but they haven't impacted any land masses as a very strong storm. This is a look at how many names we've crossing off Lorenzo, which did form as of early Monday morning, Melissa, Nestor, and then of course you get into this last column of names will be all the next names to claim, but the M and N names are going to be the next names to claim. And to put this in perspective, late last week was the anniversary of Hurricane Milton making landfall in Florida. That was the M name storm last year. So obviously we're running behind the pace of last year's hurricane season. We haven't even gotten to our M name storm so far in the 2025 hurricane season. But crossing off Lorenzo was the 12th named storm of hurricane season so far this year. creeping closer to that average of 14, but still 5 named storms off of what was forecasted for this year by Colorado State. Of those 12 named storms, 1/3 of them have been classified as hurricanes, which once again, fairly close to average, but still 5 hurricanes off of what was forecasted for this year. The most shocking thing, however, has been 3 out of those 4 hurricanes have been Category 3 or higher, which puts us right at average for a typical hurricane season, but still 1 major hurricane off what was forecasted by Colorado State. And I'll show you all of those numbers to tell you that we don't have much time left in hurricane season. About a month and a half as we hit the midway point of October, really between today and tomorrow. And it looks like we kind of see this peak right there before October 20th. We're right there around that range. And of course, that activity drastically goes down as we enter the month of November. It doesn't look like we really have too many more shots at seeing some potential named storms form or even some hurricanes form. But like I said, we could very well have some activity towards the back half of October. I think November is really a month where historically hurricane season has not produced much in the Atlantic Basin. So here's a look at your 7-day forecast. We do see a slight cool down between now and all the way into Friday. I think any afternoon or evening plans that you have on Friday going to feel great. But if you have plans into the later hours of the evening, more so the nighttime hours, probably going to want to dress a bit warm because those temperatures only get up to 79 during that peak window of the afternoon. As you progress to say 10, 11, 12 o'clock into the nighttime hours, they're going to be down in the 60s, having a bit of a chill in the air and walking out to 52 degrees early on Saturday morning. We're briefly back in the 80s. I've still maintained the 40% chance of rain that I did have as of yesterday. I do think we'll see some widely scattered showers at the very least. Am I confident in thunderstorms? Not necessarily, but a couple rumbles of thunder is something that does happen down here in the southeast just occasionally because it is a more humid section of the country. And of course, the more humidity that you do have, that can create some more prime ingredients for some potentially stronger weather. But I don't expect anything in the way of severe weather, and we're still trying to nail down exactly how widespread those rain chances will be. We'll continue to fine tune that percentage. But as of right now, I think we'll still get some peaks of sunshine that allow for a warm up to around the 80-degree mark Sunday afternoon. Then cooler and drier air comes in behind that frontal boundary. 50 for a morning low on Monday, so going to be another chilly start as you walk out the door to school and work next week. 77 for a high temperature paired up with sunshine. Can't complain about that. That is a perfect fall feeling day, a very textbook fall day that I might add as well. And then we see a warm up in the afternoon highs going into Tuesday, back there around the low 80s. This will continue to fluctuate. It's still about 6 days out into the future, but how about that morning low temperature? 47 degrees, walking out the door to some upper 40s, and not just 1 or 2 locations. They actually look to be fairly widespread. And if you're not in the upper 40s, you're just there on the cusp, maybe right around 50 or 51 degrees. And we'll continue to watch those numbers possibly even get lower. But some things to look ahead to as we head into the last half of the work week. There hasn't been much to talk about weather-wise, but this has been something we've been continuing to show over the last couple of weeks. The drought monitor hasn't changed, but it will get an update tomorrow morning. I do imagine that many areas of abnormally dry conditions and this moderate drought are going to expand across central Georgia, and we could even see some areas worsen even into possibly a severe drought, which is already on the cusp of a couple of our counties like Upson County and Chris County down to the south and the southwest. Average peak fall foliage. Obviously, you're starting to feel some of those cooler temperatures now. Still going to be a while before we start to see those leaves really start to change color into those reds, yellows, and oranges that are very vibrant. Up in the North Georgia mountains, I did mention it earlier, going to be a bit earlier to see that peak fall foliage into late October. It's around mid-October right now, so we're getting right into that time period where the North Georgia mountains are going to look beautiful. In areas of northern Georgia, sometime early November, but here in central Georgia, going to be closer to mid-November, right there around Veterans Day and into the really tail end of football season, but still a lot of good football games that are going on in mid-November. And speaking of Veterans Day, let's talk about what we're looking ahead to holiday and event-wise. Halloween, 16 days away, just over 2 weeks. The time change in about 2.5 weeks. Election Day will be right after Halloween on I believe it is November 4th, when that is going to be 20 days away. And then after that, Veterans Day. It's going to be on a Tuesday. I did confirm that with my calendar. So many students are going to have a random Tuesday off coming up in just a little less than a month. So that's everything you need to know pertaining to your extended forecast. We'll try to milk out as much rain as we can from this frontal boundary. But other than that, it's going to be full of cool mornings, plenty of sunshine, and some slightly warm afternoons. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.